For decades, the world has remained fascinated by the life, legacy, and unfinished story of Princess Diana. Her elegance, compassion, and unforgettable presence made her one of the most beloved figures of the modern royal era. But behind the public photographs, official ceremonies, and carefully preserved memories, there were always questions about the personal belongings she left behind, the objects that carried not only financial value but emotional pieces of her life. And now, a shocking royal claim has emerged. A piece of jewelry believed to have disappeared from Diana's personal collection has allegedly resurfaced, creating a storm of questions inside the royal household. According to the dramatic reports surrounding the story, Prince William discovered an emerald bracelet connected to his mother's memory hidden away in a private drawer belonging to Queen Camilla. The discovery was not simply about a piece of jewelry. For William, it represented something far deeper, a connection to the mother he lost, a promise that may have been forgotten, and a reminder of unresolved emotions that the royal family has carried for years. The moment reportedly began as an ordinary review of historical royal possessions. Inside the walls of a royal residence, officials were examining old records, comparing decades-old inventories with the items currently held within the family's collections. What appeared to be a simple administrative process quickly turned into something much more complicated when a missing entry caught attention. Among the documents was a reference to one of Diana's personal jewels, an emerald bracelet that had once been associated with private family memories rather than official royal appearances. Unlike the famous crown jewels, which belonged to the institution of the monarchy, Diana's personal belongings represented her own story. They were reminders of her relationships, her experiences, and the moments she shared with her children. For William, every item connected to Diana carried emotional significance. He was not simply looking at an expensive object. He was looking at a piece of his childhood. The question that immediately followed was simple but powerful. How could something connected to Diana's personal collection disappear for so many years? The search for answers reportedly led officials toward a private area associated with Camilla. Inside a secured drawer, hidden beneath personal items, was a velvet case containing an emerald bracelet. The discovery created immediate tension. Because if the bracelet truly belonged to Diana's private collection, then its location raised difficult questions about how it ended up there and why its history had not been openly discussed. William's reaction was described as quiet but emotional. Those close to the situation suggested that his response was not one of anger at first, but disbelief. For years, Diana's sons had carried the responsibility of protecting their mother's memory. Finding something connected to her hidden away created a painful reminder of how complicated royal history could become. The bracelet itself held a special meaning because it represented a different side of Diana, not the public princess seen during official events, but the mother who created personal memories with her sons. William remembered Diana not as a distant royal figure, but as his mother. The woman who comforted him, guided him, and taught him lessons that remained with him throughout his life. That emotional connection transformed the discovery from a question of ownership into a question of trust. Why had the bracelet not been passed forward? Why had there been confusion around its records? And why was such a personal item connected to Diana found away from the people who had always protected her legacy? As news of the discovery allegedly reached senior members of the family, the atmosphere reportedly changed. King Charles was drawn into the situation because the bracelet represented a chapter of royal history that many had hoped would remain quiet. For Charles, anything connected to Diana carried complicated memories. Their marriage, their separation, and Diana's tragic death shaped public perception of the monarchy for decades. But beyond public history was a private reality, a family still dealing with the consequences of the past. William had spent years carefully balancing respect for the monarchy with his determination to honor his mother. He rarely spoke publicly about personal disagreements inside the family, but Diana's legacy remained one of the most important parts of his identity. The discovery of the bracelet reportedly forced him to confront a painful possibility, that something belonging to his mother may have been kept away from him. The situation became even more controversial because of the difference between preservation and possession. Royal families often maintain archives, collections, and private records to protect important historical objects. But Diana's personal belongings existed in a different category. They were not merely artifacts of royal history, they were personal memories. A photograph, a letter, or a piece of jewelry could hold emotional meaning that no official record could measure. And that was why the emerald bracelet became so significant. It represented Diana's connection to the next generation. William and Harry were not simply heirs to a throne. They were her children. They were the people she wanted to carry parts of her story into the future. As questions continued to grow, attention turned toward the old records surrounding Diana's possessions. How were they catalogued after her death? Who had access to them? And were all decisions made with her son's interests in mind? These questions created a difficult moment for the royal family because they touched on something deeper than jewelry. They touched on memory. They touched on loyalty. And they touched on whether the people closest to Diana truly respected the wishes connected to her personal legacy. According to the dramatic claims surrounding the story, William refused to allow the matter to disappear quietly. Instead of accepting vague explanations, he wanted answers. He wanted to understand how an item connected to his mother could become lost within the complicated world of royal administration. The prince's approach reflected a broader change within the monarchy. A younger generation was demanding greater transparency and accountability while still respecting tradition. For William, this was not about creating another royal controversy. It was about protecting something that represented his mother's love. The bracelet became a symbol of everything Diana left behind: kindness, resilience, and the importance of family. But as the investigation into its history continued, more questions began to emerge. Because finding the bracelet was only the beginning. The bigger mystery was not where it was found. The bigger mystery was how it disappeared in the first place. And as William looked deeper into the records surrounding Diana's possessions, he began uncovering a story filled with missing details, unanswered questions, and years of silence. A silence that was now beginning to break. As Prince William continued searching for answers, the focus moved away from the emerald bracelet itself and toward the mystery surrounding its disappearance. A missing piece of jewelry could have been dismissed as a simple mistake. Royal households, after all, contain thousands of objects, documents, and personal belongings accumulated over generations. But this situation felt different because the bracelet was not just another item in a collection. It was connected to Princess Diana. And anything connected to Diana carried emotional weight that extended far beyond the walls of any royal residence. The deeper William looked into the history of the bracelet, the more complicated the story appeared. Questions emerged about old records, private decisions, and whether Diana's personal wishes had been fully respected after her death. For William, the most painful part was not discovering that the bracelet had been misplaced. It was the possibility that someone had decided where it should remain without considering what it meant to him. Throughout his life, William had protected his mother's memory carefully. He understood that Diana belonged not only to the royal family but also to millions of people around the world who admired her compassion and humanity. But privately, she was simply his mother. The woman who held his hand as a child. The woman who tried to give him a normal childhood despite living inside one of the most watched families in the world. That was why the discovery carried such emotional importance. The bracelet represented a final connection between a son and a mother who was no longer there to explain her wishes herself. As the discussion around the jewel intensified, attention reportedly turned toward the role of senior members of the royal household. The question was no longer only about where the bracelet had been kept. The question became, who knew about it? And why had the information remained hidden? For King Charles, the situation created an uncomfortable confrontation with the past. Decades had passed since Diana's death, yet the emotional impact of that era continued to influence the monarchy. Charles had spent years trying to modernize the institution and move forward. But Diana's legacy remained a powerful force that could not simply be erased. Every reminder of her brought back memories of a period filled with public scrutiny, personal pain, and family struggles. The emerald bracelet became another reminder that some chapters of royal history were never truly closed. According to the claims surrounding the discovery, William eventually confronted the issue directly. Rather than allowing advisors or officials to handle the matter behind closed doors, he wanted clarity. He wanted honesty. And most importantly, he wanted his mother's memory treated with respect. The conversation reportedly created a difficult moment inside the family. Because unlike a public disagreement, this was deeply personal. This was about trust between generations. It was about whether the younger royals could rely on those who came before them to protect what mattered most. For years, William had avoided turning family disagreements into public battles. He understood his future role and the responsibility that came with it. But Diana's belongings represented something different. They represented a part of his life before duty, before titles, before becoming the future king. They represented the boy who lost his mother and carried that loss into adulthood. The emerald bracelet became a symbol of that emotional journey, not because of its value, not because of its appearance, but because of the story attached to it. As the situation unfolded, the palace reportedly faced pressure to review how Diana's personal items had been handled over the years. The idea was simple: personal memories should not disappear inside complicated systems. They should be protected with care and transparency. For William, this was not about punishing anyone. It was about correcting the past. He understood that the monarchy survived because it adapted. Traditions could continue, but accountability was equally important. The younger generation wanted a royal institution that respected history while acknowledging mistakes. And this situation represented exactly that challenge. Eventually, the bracelet was returned to Diana's direct family line, becoming a reminder that personal possessions can carry stories much greater than themselves. The jewel was no longer viewed as something lost. Instead, it became a symbol of remembrance. A symbol of Diana's influence continuing through her son and the family she helped shape. The future of the bracelet also carried emotional meaning. Rather than allowing it to remain hidden away, William wanted it connected with the values Diana represented: love, compassion, and family. It was about ensuring that her legacy moved forward instead of remaining trapped in old disagreements. For many royal observers, the story represented something larger than a single piece of jewelry. It represented the continuing conversation about Diana's place in history. Even decades after her passing, her influence remained powerful enough to shape discussions within the royal family. Her sons continued carrying different parts of her legacy. William carried her sense of responsibility, her dedication to charity, and her desire to connect with ordinary people. And through moments like these, the world was reminded that behind the royal titles were human emotions, memories, and relationships. The emerald bracelet became more than an accessory. It became a reminder of a mother's love and a son's determination to protect her memory. It represented the idea that some things cannot be measured by price. Some possessions hold the stories of the people who wore them. They carry moments that can never be replaced. And for Prince William, recovering Diana's bracelet was not simply about finding something that had disappeared. It was about bringing a piece of his mother's story back where he believed it belonged. The royal family has always been surrounded by tradition, ceremony, and history. But moments like this reveal something much more personal: that even inside palaces, families experience loss, conflict, and the search for understanding. Princess Diana's life changed the monarchy forever. And even years after her death, her memory continues to influence the decisions, emotions, and responsibilities of those who followed her. The emerald bracelet became one more chapter in that extraordinary story. A chapter about memory, a chapter about family, and a chapter about a son who refused to let his mother's legacy disappear. Because in the end, the true value of Diana's bracelet was never found in the emeralds or the gold. Its true value was in the love, memories, and meaning it carried. And that is why, decades later, the world continues to watch every chapter of Princess Diana's unfinished legacy.